Welcome to the Open Sketchbook podcast. I'm Evan Kitson, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by painter Leah Gardner. Leah's work is a vibrant exploration of color, light, and composition. She turns everyday objects into mesmerizing still life paintings. I think you're going to really dig them if you don't already know who she is. We talk about the joys and challenges of daily painting, the business of selling art online, and the creative puzzles that make studio life so fulfilling. I think you're going to really dig our conversation. Let's get into it. Hi, Leah. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I first discovered your work on Instagram, I think. It was kind of perfect because I was teaching a painting one class and I was trying to get them to see color. I feel like at every single easel I was walking through, I'm like, do you see the pink? Do you see the blue? Do you see the light? Do you see? And they're like, I just see the color of the thing that it is, you know? And so I was taking a breather and I'm scrolling through Instagram, and then I saw some of your cut tomato paintings with light raking across them, and they had this incredible, gorgeous glow. And I was like, she gets it. Like, this is it. Yeah. And so I projected it on the wall for the students, and they're like, oh.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was amazing.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it was like serendipitous. It was perfect.
Oh my god.
And it's one of those times where social media just gives you what you're looking for.
Yeah, when the algorithm like gets it right.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
So that was like, I had no idea who you were. You just all of a sudden popped up. And I've seen your work a lot since then. And obviously I follow you and all of that fun stuff. What's been your journey into painting, and how did I eventually find your stuff on social media?
So, okay. At the beginning of COVID, I was working in marketing for a hotel company and obviously got laid off. So I was just like unemployed and a little bit delusional maybe. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna like take up painting and become a painter. Which is in hindsight like really ridiculous. I had painted like a little bit, like never seriously. Like in high school in the summer, I'd like mess around with acrylics and paint just kind of ugly stuff. But I always liked drawing, so I would do like pencil portraits and stuff. So I definitely had like some sort of like foundational ability. But yeah, in hindsight, it was, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, it worked out, so I can't complain, but like honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. But yeah, so I bought some oil paints and I just started practicing. I read the book by Carol Marine. I think it's called The Daily Painter. I started painting like not like daily, but like on a regular basis and just practicing. And so basically from March, April, I think is when I kind of started fiddling around until the following spring. I wasn't super serious about it, but like I'd made an Instagram and I was trying to practice on a regular basis. But then I think after about a year is when things really started to click and I made a website, and that's just kind of where it all started.
That's amazing. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I love the decision where it's like, okay, I'm home. We're all home. I got to figure this out. I'm a painter now. Like,
Yeah.
I just love that. Your subject matter is kind of in line with what I've seen a lot from the daily painters. I discovered them, I think, when the daily painting felt like a movement, which would have been, I guess, around 2008 to 10. I feel like it was really in full swing, where you would go to like
Okay.
dailypainting.com and like all that stuff, and people would
Yeah.
have these like amazing alla prima paintings that they would crank out in like a day.
Okay. Well, I was like 13 then, so I wasn't really into
Going on the
that
daily
yet.
painting websites.
Yeah, no, I feel like
Yeah.
I missed out though. That sounds cool.
Well, I mean, you definitely didn't miss out. It seems like you're carrying that sort of thing on. So, did you do a painting just about every day while you were getting going?
Yes. I think in 2021 I probably did, or at least came pretty close. And then I think, I was trying to paint bigger stuff, but I was still keeping this expectation on myself to paint something every day, which was just not reasonable.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of, burnt out and fizzled out on that. But in hindsight, like, I'm very glad I did it because that's literally how I developed the skills to do this full time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So you are a full-time painter,
Yes.
and your website is really fun and playful.
Thank you.
but also very to the point, very professional. It showcases your work beautifully, but also the business side is very front and center too. It seems like you're championing both. And when I hear that you used to be in marketing, I'm like, oh, well, that's maybe why, because a lot of artists aren't very good at that kind of thing.
I think it just comes down to like making money. So
Yeah,
I'm like trying really hard to do that. And you
absolutely.
can't really do that without a good online presence if you're selling online.
Yeah, that's really true. It's the kind of thing where when you were saying you did a painting every day when you were developing your whole thing, the thought that I had was the material costs, like that becomes a thing, material costs, storage.
Yeah,
So what scale were you working?
really small. I would do like 4 by 4 inch paintings, sometimes even 3 by 3 inches. So anywhere between that and like 8 by 8 inches. Like for like something I could finish in one day, the absolute maximum would be 8 by 10 inches.
That's really cool.
So I can't do that anymore though, because now my paintings of that size have gotten a lot more involved and they take me like 3 days.
Right. So when you were initially starting, what was the subject matter?
It was just like objects, like random objects that I thought had kind of a good vibe, basically.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, I wasn't really like setting up anything elaborate the way I do now. I was just like, I don't know, like trying to find a thing that didn't feel too like daunting or overwhelming because I knew, if something was too challenging, I'd just give up.
That's really cool because you're the stuff that I was seeing for your still lives, like these are not simple paintings. You're finding really complicated lighting situations. You're staging them in really fun ways where you break up all the space, and they're really beautiful.
Thank you.
But it also feels like stuff you probably just have.
Yeah. For the most part. I definitely like have to go out and buy certain things, like wine, because I really don't drink that often, like especially not at home. Like I never just have like wine ready to go. Like I go to Target and I buy like a $3 bottle of wine. But like the books, yeah, for sure. I mean, just in terms of like what I've got going on right now. But yeah, a lot of the times it's stuff I just do have around. It's not really anything super out of the ordinary still. I think for me, what's the most interesting is the composition and how the light comes through it and creates shapes.
Yeah, your shapes are so well considered, and there's something really beautiful about how you compose them because it almost has this like it's very painterly, but it also has like a vector art gradient kind of thing going on where yeah, it's like those two things are in harmony with each other, and that's something that I usually don't see very often. And I think the effect is really beautiful and everything just kind of works.
Thank you.
How did you work that out? Was that like a slow build, a determined thing, or
I think it's been like kind of a slow build. I think a lot of it is instinctual. I definitely, like when I'm painting, I do find it very satisfying to just like carve out shapes and like geometry. I also, like you said, I do like, a little bit of a gradient. I don't blend like a ton on the surface, but like sometimes it just like hits just right when you get a really good gradient. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of what I gravitate towards. I mean, I also do stage all my own stuff and I like wait for the right kind of light to come. And I think in the moment, like I know, oh, this is going to be a good one. Like I like all these places where like the light is intersecting and how the shadows are casting on each other. And yeah, I think a lot of it does come from setting it up just right before I even start painting.
that's really cool. One of the things that was transformative just for me as like a person was teaching painting to undergrad students. When I give a lecture on color and color theory and seeing the color of the light, and then I walk down the street, I feel like I'm like tripping. It's like this incredible, overwhelming sensation of the most beautiful purple shadows I've ever seen in my life, and all of these like great warm colors finding their ways in, and I think about so much of my life I just wasn't aware.
Yeah.
Like shadows would just be it's darker.
Yep.
Like
I totally know what you mean. It's like, and I'm not like this every day, obviously, because I'm not always paying attention to my surroundings, but sometimes you just like tune in and you're like, oh yeah, like that spot right there, like, is really just tickling my brain. And it's stuff I don't think I ever would have noticed before kind of learning how to, like, look at what color things actually are, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, so when you started to learn how to paint, were you following exercises in the book, or were you just like, I'm just gonna grab this thing, I kind of get the gist, let's just go
Yeah.
for it?
I'm not patient about completing an exercise as it's meant to be completed, unfortunately. Like, I wish I was like that. I'm just not. Like, actually, it's funny you mentioned teaching undergrads in college. I actually was signed up for a painting class, and I think I went twice or maybe three times, and I was like, I can't do this. I dropped it. I was like,
What?
I can't paint stuff that I didn't decide I want to paint. It just isn't for me.
That's so interesting to hear because I mean your stuff feels very seen. I guess that's the best word for it. And it makes me think you choose things that have a strong visual impact for you.
Yeah.
But I also have like a hard time being like, those tomatoes are like, man, those are your tomatoes, like, so it seems like you really walk the line of you put design first and almost object second. Not always, but it kind of feels that way sometimes. Is that a semi-fair statement?
I think that's fair. It's not necessarily like a conscious choice, but I think above all, I care about how things look more than what they are or what they mean.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
guess my stuff isn't very like meaningful in that sense. Like, I just like am like, I feel like these objects are cool, but they could be much more. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I mean, do you ever struggle with that?
Sometimes, yeah, I think a little bit because it's like hard to make a decision about what I'm going to compose with because I don't really feel like a strong pull towards these objects and their meaning. It's more like I have to just like pull these random things out of my brain that I think would make sense together visually, but like, I don't know. It is weird for me if I like paint a bunch of things together that I don't really think go together, but I don't know. I think that's more just me like making life difficult for myself. Like, I
Yeah.
tend to like have an idea and find ways to shut it down instead of going for it. So I think there's some of that there too.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so speaking of the idea of like objects and meaning, I feel at home with your work because when I'm drawing, I feel like I am recording the connection of my vision with my subjects, and I could sit there and draw a garbage can and make it look super beautiful and interesting because I can find it super beautiful and interesting,
Yeah.
but I'm not always making like a grand statement about trash,
Yeah, I
like,
know exactly what you mean. Like, if the
yeah.
light is hitting the trash can just right, like, I feel like I could find a way to make it like a colorful, glowing trash can, or like, I don't know. I would like to be able to do that. Like, that's kind of the goal for me.
Yeah, and so when I first saw your work, that's how I felt. I was like, okay, this is someone that is reveling in the beauty of just looking and seeing something as beautiful
Hmm.
and then enjoying painting.
Yeah.
And I feel like that component, it's just what makes work joyful to look at. Like there's a lot of art in the world where you look at it and you're like, I wonder if they had fun making that, or like where are they coming from? But with your work, it really looks fun. It looks like visual puzzles that you're enjoying solving.
That, thank you so much. That, first of all, that is like kind of how it does feel. Like, it does kind of feel like solving a puzzle. It's like a combo of solving a puzzle and trying not to like have my hand wobble, basically.
Yeah, because so much of your brush work really, and it is cool to hear that you don't do a lot of mixing on the surface because it does feel very direct. Like right brush stroke, right placement, right color note, like all of that.
Yeah, and I hesitate to always call it right, but I think a big part of my technique is just like committing. Like, once something is there, I'm not changing it. I'm just rolling with it and hoping that it all comes together.
That's really cool. I'm mentoring a student right now who's working in ballpoint.
Okay.
And so much of our conversation is about that. Like when you put down the ink, it's there,
Yeah.
so how are we going to work with it? And that's kind of part of the joy.
Yeah.
Does that extend into your drawings? I don't know if I've seen any drawings from you.
I haven't drawn like with pencil in years at this point because I just would so much rather paint. Like once I discovered color, I just like couldn't get as excited about working in pencil anymore. But I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't think you would probably like look at my stuff that I would do in pencil and connect it to my current work. I actually just did a lot of like portraits. Like I definitely had like the drawing the hot girl syndrome, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly don't really think they look maybe like they were done by the same person. Granted, it's been a really long time since I drew anything, so who knows? But yeah.
So when you begin your paintings, how do you sort of like take up the territory? Like, do you lay things out? What's the tactic?
What really changes is whether or not I'm doing a still life or just like something else that I like have a photo of that like I already like snapped by chance and like kept in a folder or something. For a still life, obviously I have to like set up the composition first, and I work from photos. So I set up compositions and take a bunch of pictures, and then I like pick out my favorites and like crop them and all that, you know. But once that's done, it's pretty much all the same. I have like my big stack of panels that are pre-gessoed, so I don't have to really do anything. They're all ready to go. I leave them white. Like I don't do like an underpainting or anything like that. I just draw a sketch in pencil of what I'm painting, and it's almost like I almost do it like I'm doing a coloring book, only with a paintbrush and paint instead of markers or pencils. Like the drawing is pretty detailed in that like all the planes of colors are like clearly delineated, and I'm pretty much just covering it in. So in that sense it's pretty meditative because like the only decisions I really need to make are like the color and the value, which I guess is still kind of a lot, but you know, it's easier to just get into the zone because I'm not like nervous about like getting the layout all wrong or like having things that are like not the right size or shape or whatever. But yeah, my approach is just coloring book style pretty much.
That's cool. So it sounds like a lot of your composing comes from the photography then.
Yes, like a huge part. And that's kind of one of my favorite parts. Like I really love coming up with a good composition and like getting excited about it, you know? Because sometimes it's not that fun to paint something when you're not really excited about it yet, and you have to like hype yourself up as you go. But like for me, when I get that perfect composition and the light is just right, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait to paint this.
Yeah. So when it comes to translating the subject from the composed photograph into the constructed painting, how is discovering your take on that? Because some people it's really based on the photo, and others the photo is just like a starting point, or maybe they'll go back to it after a while. So, like for you, what was finding that right balance?
So, okay, the whole time I'm working, I do have the photo pulled up in front of me on an iPad, so it's definitely very important. I would say like the composition is totally literal. I mean, unless there's like something weird and ugly in the background of my photo that I like couldn't get out of the way, and then I just exclude that.
Hmm.
But like the important parts are going to be just like laid out and shaped pretty much exactly like the photo. The color and the value are definitely where I start deviating. And like sometimes I'll deviate like kind of a lot, like paint a totally different cover on a book or something, or like totally change colors and like you wouldn't really know it was coming from the same reference photo. But especially when I'm painting like liquids, I could not do it without a reference. It's way too complicated.
Yeah, especially when they're transparent and when you get the light refraction and
Yes.
all of that stuff. Yeah, it's just
There's not a
so.
chance I could do that without the photo in front of me.
Yeah, I don't think many people could,
Yeah, you'd have to have
honestly.
like photographic memory or something.
You have to really understand the physics of how light finds its
Yeah.
way through liquids,
And you'd have to
right?
know like exactly where the light is coming from. Like that would just be like you'd have to be like a savant or something.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, yeah, that's really cool. So when we first started chatting here, you had mentioned that you started an Instagram. How early was that in your process?
It was pretty early. Like early enough to where I would never scroll back to look at it because I would just be so embarrassed. I think it's still there. Like if you wanted to scroll all the way back, I mean, it would take forever to load, but it's there.
That brings up a really good point because sometimes the advice that I think of for undergraduate students looking to get into this is don't put your stuff out there too soon. You know, like take your time, develop your voice, and then really curate it and put it out there. But I'm wondering for you, since it was like sort of tandem with your development of your own painting practice, did the Instagram help you keep it up? Like working every day and posting?
I'm not really sure that it did because it was actually like a little like close friends and family account that I originally made. So it's not like I was really impressing anyone except for like my closest friends and family. And I don't know, I don't really feel all that accountable to them, as bad as that sounds. Like they don't care what I'm doing, so why should I, you know? I think there is something to be said for like every now and then something would like perform a little better than usual and like random people would like it and I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm famous. And I had like, 55 followers or something. And it would kind of like make me feel good and make me feel motivated. But I don't, I don't think it was a necessity. Um, yeah, I don't think it really matters one way or the other. At least for me, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's really cool. Finding your voice on the internet and with marketing and seeing like the format for your work and how to best display that. It's such a challenge now because either the people that are teaching it are like, here's our system, pay us so you learn it. And then there's other people that are like, I just do whatever. I think both of those can't quite work, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's such a challenge for people coming up, but
Yeah.
the way that your website is set up really well and your Instagram practices and everything, like how you use social media is really, it feels very present in what you're doing. Like you have sort of a disciplined engagement with it. I don't know, is that true?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm smiling because it's not the most fun. Like
Right. Yeah, it's work.
yeah, it's really hard work, honestly. So if it looks easy, it's not. Like I feel like I'm constantly on one app or the other. Like while I'm trying to paint, I'm like checking on something. I'm on Instagram, Pinterest, X/Twitter still, Blue Sky. Did I say Tumblr already?
No.
And I just started TikTok too. So it's just like, and like granted, you can multi-purpose content across all of those platforms, but that doesn't mean you don't have to like go on and post and like engage with comments. Cause like I feel really bad if someone leaves a comment and all I do is heart it, but like a lot of the time that's like all I have time to do at this point. But yeah, no, it's like a huge grind to be consistent on social media.
It really is.
It's not the best.
It's not, but you don't have a gallery, do you?
No. So it's like that's how I sell my work. I mean, my website
Yes.
is, but like people come to my website from all those social medias.
Yeah, and do you have help with marketing or the business side?
So last summer, I started working with a marketing company. It's a very small company. It's just two people.
Nice.
But they helped me like make over my website and they helped me with email marketing, which I was not doing before. And that's been like a huge game changer. They're really good and make my
That's really
life way
cool.
easier. Yeah.
So for your email marketing, do you have like a newsletter you send out or like what could people look to if they sign up for it?
What I'm trying to do this year is once a month, I'll send out like a newsletter with like updates, what I'm working on, like what I want to be working on, just general, thoughts. And then I'll try to like have one marketing email also. So from month to month, it depends. Like maybe I'll have a sale and that's what I'll use my marketing email for, just to like remind people that I've listed some new original paintings on my site if I don't have a sale going on. Just like random whatever's going on at the time. If I need to market something, that's just like what I use that email for.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like here's what I have going on behind the scenes thing. It's kind of like what a lot of people use for Patreon, but
Yeah.
you're kind of skipping that and just being like, I'll just send you an email with it.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I just don't feel like I've thought about doing a Patreon and I just can't help but feel like I would be disappointing the people who are paying for content. um, it it just wouldn't feel right. I don't think I can like meet my goal of painting as much as possible and doing all this social media and all this other stuff while also making like specific content just for Patreon. For me, it just doesn't really feel like the right vibe to put contact with me behind a paywall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
And I totally get why people do it because like I said, it is really hard. Like if you have a larger social media account or just like a bunch of social media accounts, like it is hard to keep up with engaging with people and like
Yeah.
showing them that you are happy that they're taking the time to like look at your stuff and all that. Because like, you know, I'm sure you can relate to this. Like every comment like makes me feel good. I mean, if it's a nice comment.
Right.
But
I was gonna say everyone.
yeah, not all of them actually. I take that back. But like when people take the time to say nice things and I don't have time to respond, I'm like, oh, I'm the worst person ever. Like it feels bad. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember specifically giving myself the challenge for a while where I said, I'm going to respond to everything and it's going to be fully written out and I'm going to demonstrate the reciprocal interaction. And it added like an hour to my day.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I don't mind that, but I also need to do other things
Yeah. Like you're a
because,
painter or you're an artist. Like
yeah, and so
not a
now I'm
commenter.
not cleaning up my studio. Now I'm not doing this.
I
Like, this
know.
is not sustainable.
No, it's so hard.
But what I've seen work really well on Patreon is like art instruction or giving out like references, like something where it's very clear that they would be paying for that somewhere else anyway. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that's not really what you're doing. You're continuing the conversation through email.
Yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like I have seen the artists who provide reference photos and I think that's really helpful for a lot of people. But again, like it takes it takes time to like provide reference photos. Like that's a lot of work. I mean, for me personally, like staging a composition and photographing it and all that stuff, like I'll spend several hours and get like two good photos out of it to paint from.
Yeah, I have a still life club on my website where I give out photo references and
Yeah.
I decided to make it free because, just put out some cool stuff, show
Yeah.
people what we have going on. But every month that photo shoot takes me hours
Yeah, I bet it
and
does. Like that is very generous because it's so hard.
it's fun, but it is hard and
Yeah.
it's photographing it where I'm like, what would I have fun with? And then I'm
Hmm.
thinking, what would they have fun with too?
Yeah,
Because it's not really my work. Like it's an extension, you know?
totally. Yeah.
And so it's really different.
Yeah, no, I've been literally like dripping sweat at the end of a staging session, like in front of the light and like crouching down, like picking things up, putting them back, moving 'em around. Like it's it's literally hard work. Or like, God forbid, I have to stage outside because it's like dark out, like carrying everything down 3 flights of stairs into the backyard, being out in the sun, just like it's yeah, it's definitely not just like work that does itself, you know? And I think it looks easy, so people don't really see how not easy it is.
Yeah, that's really true. There's that thing of like the proliferation of all the photographs on the internet,
Hmm.
where at any time you're like, I want to paint a fruit still life. Let me go on any of the royalty-free image sites and type in fruit still life.
Yeah.
And you're seeing people's like real labor
Hmm.
and it's just there.
And it's just free, but half of that stuff is like stolen. I've figured
Yeah, I
out. Yeah.
know. I know.
Which is even
Which
worse.
it's yeah, it's yeah, it hurts.
Yeah,
It
it's
hurts.
bad. Yeah, and you know, when I started, I actually did work from a lot of those free photos, like Unsplash, you know, and whatever. I forget all the names of them. But I just think it's so much better to just take your own because then you're just in control of the whole situation and you can get it to look exactly the way you want it and make it something that you like really want to paint and know you'll have fun painting, which is at the end of the day kind of the point. Like if it's not enjoyable, why are you doing it? I mean, obviously to learn, but also like it should just be fun also because you can learn while still having fun. That's my opinion anyways.
Yeah, one of the best bits of advice I got from one of my teachers, Ad Nerdrum, was the moment it's not fun, just stop.
Yeah.
because you're not going to make good decisions.
Yeah.
Just stop, you
And I
know?
think that's also especially true when you are literally like self-employed making art because there's so many aspects of it that like aren't fun. Like I would never trade it for anything, but like it's so much work. So it's like why make it harder for yourself? Like if you want to work a job that you're not having fun with, just go work for a company again.
Yeah, get health benefits.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
do something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things on your website that's really well done is your print section.
Thank you.
So, how long have you been offering prints?
Oh my gosh. Not long after I started my website.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because I had like when I first started painting and I had like a few paintings that were like winners, like they performed well on social media. I was like, okay, I better make prints of these. Like it's just like the logical thing to do. And yeah, there's definitely been like trial and error with like print providers and how I wanted to do things. But I'm at a really good place right now. I love my printers. And yeah, I feel like I'm finally in the groove with offering good prints.
I got really lucky, and I have someone very close to me that works with people who make amazing prints. And so I'm about to start dipping my toe into prints,
Yay! Oh my
which is really
gosh.
exciting. Yeah.
Yes. Your
But
life will be changed.
I gotta tell you, like it's been a journey where I don't really trust a lot of print places because it's just cranking them out, high volume, like they don't know you, like
Yeah.
it's so you don't have to tell us who you get your prints from, but I'd be really interested in sort of your journey of like getting good reproductions of your work made and like what tips do you have for people that are like thinking it could be a good avenue for them?
First of all, I will not keep my printers a secret because I love them and they deserve lots of business. It's called Pigeon Print House, which I felt like they emailed me and I was like, okay, like I paint so many pigeons, I have to at least give them a try. They're amazing. They're so responsive. They're so helpful. Like I literally just am obsessed with them. I think they might have a program where when you sign up, if you like tell them who referred you, I might get a bonus. I actually don't know for a fact.
Okay, cool. Well,
But
if that does work, send
yeah.
me a link and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, and like
Yeah.
anyone listening, if you sign up,
Yeah.
say that I directed you to Pigeon Print House. They're like literally the best. Okay, when I first started, I was using MPix. It's just like a photography printing website, and honestly, like I was happy with the quality, but they're not very transparent about the type of paper they use, which is kind of like something that's important to me. Like I want to know everything about like the type of ink and paper and all that, and like currently I print on sustainable bamboo paper. It's like super heavy duty and like it's archival and I trust it. Like I trust that it's archival products, which because that's important to me. I'm not going to name names, but there is a print company out there that I do not recommend. And I worked with them for too long, ended up pretty much getting like kind of screwed over that like they were going to go from like free shipping to $25 shipping to the US. And I didn't find that out until like 2 days before it went into effect.
Wow.
So that was rough. I basically had to just like stop all operations and like figure something out like in 24 hours. So that led me into doing my own prints. Like, so I was ordering inventory from Finer Works, which good quality prints, like I liked them, and then shipping them all out myself, which, oh my God, it took so much time. And not to mention, people who work at the post office in Chicago are some of the grumpiest employees I have ever interacted with. Like, I've seen people cry in there. I've come very close to crying in there. They've accused me of stealing. I've seen them accuse other people of stealing. Like, it
What
is
is going
genuinely
on?
traumatic to go in there sometimes. Yeah, so like that was like a huge part of why I wanted to stop doing that because I was like, I can't. Like, my blood pressure would like spike on the days I knew I was going to the post office and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, like
your print company now handles the shipping, and
everything.
so is it kind of like a drop shipping situation or?
I guess so. I don't totally know how dropshipping works, but what happens is they're based in California. They're integrated with my website. So every print goes straight to them. They print it out and they pack it up and they mail it from their printing studio.
That's drop shipping. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
it's
perfect.
dropshipping then.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think they still are, just like a husband and wife duo.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's pretty small. I mean, at this point, maybe they've hired other people, because I'm sure they've been growing. I mean, they're amazing, so I can't see how they wouldn't be.
Well, that sounds like a really great solution for people to look into if they're interested in getting prints made.
Yeah, and I've been like so thrilled with the quality. And like when I do art fairs, they're who I order my prints from. They send them all like with backing in them already for me, and they just like look so good in person.
If you're enjoying the podcast and you want maybe a little bit more, please check out my online community, The Virtual Studio. You can find all of our podcast episodes, including behind the scenes and virtual member exclusive episodes. The one I just recorded was about building a still life, specifically for the Still Life Club image reference set that I just released for March. It's a lot of fun. A lot of times artists don't really get taught how to build a still life or what goes into our thinking when it comes to making a still life. It was a lot of fun to break that down. So if you want to keep the conversation going, if you want to become a part of the conversation, ask our guests questions, give me suggestions of what you want to listen to, please show up, join the Virtual Studio online community. There will be a link in the show notes. That's amazing. And you're, of course, like getting really great photography of your stuff. Do you shoot your own paintings?
Yes. Yeah, I take pics on my camera. I'm not like a photography person, so I don't totally know what I'm talking about, but it's a Fujifilm X100V. I've had it for a long time. It was a Christmas gift like years ago. That's what I use.
That's great. How do you, all right, like, how do you set the lighting up to take photos of your paintings? Because that's one of the things that drives a lot of people
Yeah.
crazy.
And it used to drive me crazy too. It still kind of does drive me crazy, but I have basically figured out like the optimum lighting conditions for my own artwork just based on like the texture it consistently has. So I definitely think this also will vary for like whatever medium you use, whatever like surface you're working on, like how reflective your artwork is, you know? So like for me, mine is pretty shiny because it's like thick oil paint.
Yeah.
So I pretty much have to take my photos in front of a window in like soft ambient lighting between the hours of like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And if it's like too sunny or too cloudy, I just have to wait for a different day, basically. Um,
That's incredible.
no like artificial lighting has ever worked for me personally.
Yeah.
It
Well,
just,
your photos look great.
thank you. It's
Yeah.
I'm like, if you could see me taking the pictures, I'm like holding them like at weird angles and like bending over sideways, holding my camera in very strange ways, like just to try and not get like the reflections, but also not to have the painting be like in the dark. It's
Right.
challenging. It's never easy.
Well, it's definitely working for you.
Thank you.
I think that idea of like going near a window, getting that really specific ambient light that you know works for the type of image that you're going for when it
Yeah.
comes to the translation of your paintings,
Yes.
and that you've really worked that out. That's really cool.
I mean, unfortunately, like, and I get this question a lot, like, how do you take good pictures of your artwork? I really do kind of feel like the only answer is trial and error and then practice. Like, you have to
Yeah.
know what works and then get good at holding it the right way before you develop like the instinct. Like, it sounds silly to have to practice that specifically, but like, I had to anyways.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also recognize that you're working in a scale that will allow you to do that. Like you're not
Yes.
painting wall sized,
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like,
right?
I've started scaling up my work like in the past year or so, and bigger paintings are definitely harder. And I
So,
think as I get bigger and bigger, I'm probably gonna have to like bring in a professional.
yeah, so when you say bigger and bigger, what does that mean? Because you
Yeah.
were
So
talking
to
about
you,
like 4 by 4, 10 by
yeah.
10.
And to a lot of people, this won't sound big, but I just finished a painting that was like, I think 20 by 24 inches. And then like a few months ago, I did one that I think was like maybe 24 by 30 inches.
Cool.
So by some artist standards, it really isn't big. But for me, it's big. I mean, it takes forever because everything is so detailed, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like the way I've been sizing up, I haven't really been like enlarging the objects in my painting so much as I've been adding more of them to a painting. Does that make sense?
It does. And looking
Okay.
at your recent still lives, you can tell. You're like, that's a lot more
Yeah.
books. That's a lot of stuff. There's
It's
a
like
lot
the
of bounce light.
scale is the same. There's
Mm-hmm.
just way more happening. So
Yeah.
it's like the equivalent of like 20 small paintings.
That obviously has had an impact on the daily painting practice.
Yes.
So you said when you first started out that you were painting essentially a painting a day.
Yeah, pretty much.
When did that change and what facilitated that?
Trying to think. I feel like it maybe changed like almost 3 years ago. Trying to think. Wow, I've been doing this for almost 5 years now. I guess like actually full time, almost 4 years, but that's crazy. So yeah, I would say like maybe about 3 years ago. Like I was sort of like starting to do larger work. I was taking on more commissions, and anyone who's done commissions knows that they do take so much longer just between all the communication required and like staging everything to order basically and all that stuff. So, my work was just it was becoming more labor intensive for one finished piece. And I was just like, I feel like I was working longer and longer hours. I mean, I was working like a lot on weekends and like kind of late into the night on weekdays. And it was just like way too much. Like it wasn't healthy and it was like not fun anymore. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
there's that pressure of I'm a full-time artist. This is what I signed up for. This
Yeah.
is what I identify as. This is my thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't get to sleep tonight.
Yeah. And then I think there's also like, you kind of feel like, I mean, maybe this is just me, but I know that like being a full-time artist is a dream for a lot of people, or even just being self-employed and like comfortably self-employed is just like a dream for so many people. And I feel like if I don't squeeze like the absolute most out of it, then I'm an asshole.
Right.
Which is like so illogical. Um, but yeah, that's just how I feel, I guess.
It's a really tricky, weird guilt thing for sure. It definitely has baked in anxiety to it that you definitely don't anticipate before it happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And so yeah, when you made that switch, was it like I have to change this and here's the new rules, or was it like a slow transition?
A little bit of both. I'm like remembering when I basically was like, I can't do this anymore. I was doing a commission and someone had sent back like a really long list of feedback, which is fair. Like you're paying a lot of money to have something like totally bespoke. Like I totally get it, but in the moment I was like, I can't even look at this. Like I was just like pissed, which again, not fair for me to be mad about that, but it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I was like, I can't do it. So I literally just like took a week off and didn't paint anything. And I think I had done that on like vacations when I was out of town, like maybe once or twice in that year and a half or so. But I had never really just like let myself be at home and like doing work stuff, but not painting. And I was like, oh, I feel happy again. Like it was making me not like painting basically. Like I think, it was too much of a good thing.
Yeah, that's one of the bits of advice you hear all the time is to not do the thing you love for your job.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, it takes a lot of like conscious effort to not ruin it for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a hard balance to strike, and I feel like you always have to be on top of it because the bad habits come creeping back.
Yes. Especially, yeah, I mean, that's such a human thing, right?
Yeah.
Where once you get comfortable, bad habits creep in,
Mhm.
and then yeah, when you get those little bits of friction, you're just
Mhm.
like, can I just push pause on this? And
Yeah.
then you don't get back to it, and all of a sudden you have an angry client, or
Yeah.
a print order doesn't get fulfilled in some weird way. Although now you
Yeah.
have printers where that doesn't happen, so that's great.
Yeah. But
But
there's always
yeah,
going to be like customer service requests or like something got lost in the mail or something.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, when you do run a business, like you're going to have ongoing obligations to people who gave you money in exchange for something that you need to fulfill. And that is a lot of pressure, especially because like some people are not nice to you.
yeah. The moment that it's a business interaction. The moment that someone goes from being someone who loves and appreciates your work to a customer,
Yeah.
it's a very different relationship. And most of the time, like 99% of the time, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But
Most people are
there's
so nice and
inevitably,
appreciative.
yeah, just going to be that 1% where through no one's fault, circumstance creates a bit of friction.
Yeah. Or sometimes you just have a customer who is just like not very well adjusted, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I feel like 99.9% of people are like super nice, and like the amount of nice, kind messages I get is so nice. So it's like, why does that one really bizarre, mean message hit so hard?
It stays with you
It,
too.
oh my
Like
gosh.
I'll get critiques online where someone will say something and I'm like, that is such a meaningless comment, you
Hmm.
know? It's a nothing thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, when you make what you love your job,
Hmm.
that stays with you.
Yeah. And like, you are like, you're literally putting everything out there. Like, I mean, you're putting your artwork out there, but you're also like putting your name out there and like standing behind not only your work, but like a product and like a service and like a customer experience. Like, it all comes back to you. You're not like, you can't hide behind like a faceless customer service agent. I mean, at least I can't. I'm answering all my own emails. So, like,
Yeah.
when someone emails me like to whom it may concern, I'm like, it's literally just me.
It
Like,
concerns
it
me.
concerns
Yeah.
me only and you, I guess. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so how do you decide what pieces become prints or what you want to focus on sharing and putting stuff out there, because that's not always the easiest choice, cuz I don't know, is it always the thing that you love the most right now, or is it what plays better? How do you determine that? Like what does that look like?
So, okay, that's an interesting question. I feel like usually, like, paintings that I really like also tend to be like crowd pleasers. But I'm like,
Perfect.
okay, do I like them because I know they're going to be crowd pleasers, or do I just like the painting or how it turned out? But so like I feel like 9 out of 10 times I can tell how a painting is going to perform on social media, like whether it's going to sell quickly, all that stuff. So I usually have like a pretty good feeling that I'm going to have to make prints of it because like there's going to be demand for it. Like people are going to be leaving comments being like prints, prints, prints. So it's usually not like a tough decision. Like from a business perspective, it's usually a pretty obvious decision because I'm like, okay, there are people who want to buy this. Yeah, but every now and then, like, I do have a painting that I personally really like, and I'm like, oh, this is like a banger. I'm gonna get prints ready because, like, I feel like people are gonna really like this one. And then no one likes it at all, and I'm like, that's embarrassing.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Um yeah, cuz I've done that. You know, I'll be in the studio, I'm drawing something and I'm thinking, this is it.
Yeah.
Like people are going to see what I see in
Yeah.
this work and I'm going to be able to connect with them on it and it's going to be really cool.
Hmm.
And then it goes out to like aggressive crickets, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
You're like, what?
yeah. And I was
And then
like,
you're like, was it just like really fun to make? Like, is that why I like it so much? Because it was just like smooth sailing the whole time? Or like, is everyone
yeah.
else wrong?
And then there's a really tricky thing I think that a lot of artists navigate, which is it made me happy and I'm the author, so that's all that should matter.
Yeah.
And then on one hand, I can support that because we all feel that creative impulse and we all know what that feels like.
Yeah, for sure.
On the other hand, we all have to pay rent, and if this is going to be your job,
Yeah.
what you put in the world needs to be connected to.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we don't have the gallery telling us, like, no, that's probably not going to play well, or that series is undercooked right now, or
Yeah.
like, I feel like with social media, the supportive business critical feedback of the work, that voice is kind of gone and replaced with, I guess, the algorithm. I hate the word the algorithm
I
because it's
know.
sort of a catch-all for like magic,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, and to feel upset about something not taking off just feels so silly in hindsight, but it's a real feeling that we all whether we admit it or not, we all have, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
I think everyone probably feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I feel that way like on a pretty regular basis, but I think at the end of the day, like as a person, I am very practical and business minded. So I try not to get too like caught up in my like artist feelings. And then I also do think though that like, if you are able to run things the right way from a business perspective and put out enough prints to where you can kind of have like ongoing income, it does free you up to experiment with things that like you're pretty sure people aren't really going to care about, except for you, but they're personally
Right.
fulfilling. So I think that you can strike a balance. You just have to be conscious of like the amount of risk and how you can support yourself while you experiment. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. Yeah. So when you started out, because there's probably going to be a lot of people starting out who have these questions, and this stuff might get covered in a professional practices course, but not from people that are doing it.
Hmm.
So when it came to the business side of things, I know a lot of artists are sort of like, well, we used to just give it to the gallery and then they do it. I don't know what to do. How do I market? How do I decide what number is good enough, when it came to pricing your work? Because I was able to check out your website and look at your commission pricing, which I feel is really, really affordable, which is awesome. How did you end up arriving at the cost of your work? Like, what are some of the factors that you think about?
So, okay, for commissions specifically, which like they actually are closed for 2025, and
That's great.
that might just be a forever thing. When I was first setting my prices for just regular originals, I had them priced like pretty inexpensive. I think it was like $150 for like, no, maybe like $100 for like a 6 by 6 inch piece. And granted, I was really new and like didn't totally know what I was doing. So like, given my skill set, it was maybe more on the expensive side. But, for like the market in general, it was on the cheap side. And there's an artist named Chris Long. He does like a lot of like really colorful landscapes and stuff. And he was like, double your prices. And I was like, no, like no one will buy it. But I was like, you know what? I'll double them for a week and see what happens. I doubled them. And that day I sold 2 paintings for double the price. So that sort of ended up being my starting point for pricing. And then just through the years, I've increased it. I couldn't tell you actually like what my price per square inch is, but it's become like instinctive at this point. And like sometimes if I feel like a painting within a certain size range was like harder than others, I make it a little more expensive. And I feel like that happens gradually enough through the years that I gradually increase my prices. But it's kind of a natural process. That was kind of long-winded explanation. I hope it
No, it's
made
it's
sense.
fantastic. Yeah, it's really, really good because it's coming from a place of experience and what has worked for you. So I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of people that use the price per square inch. I think that works really well for what you're doing because you work in very standard sizes.
Yes. Yeah. And I definitely recommend doing that. And, people do like email me or message me a lot asking how to price their artwork. And I'm like, I can't make that decision for you.
Yeah, well, it's if there's any one person that's gonna pretend to be the voice of the market, you probably shouldn't trust them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I never really know like how to tell people to price their works. I feel like it has to kind of come from like your own intuition and like what do you think you're worth, which might be thought provoking for some people. It definitely is for me.
There's always that thing. Like I had sold a drawing recently to a collector, and it's from a series that doesn't get a lot of love from me in the studio, so it's a pretty rare subject, and the scale is different than I usually go, and
Mhm.
it's the medium and the method, so there's a lot of things that take it out of the typical, right?
Mhm.
And so I factor all that in when I do pricing. Like, what's the eventual scarcity of this type of work,
Yeah.
And ended up being like a pretty good price. And I said, here's what it is. There's some breathing room. You're a collector. I really, really appreciate that you're into this, and I would love it to be with you instead of just like in a flat file somewhere,
Yeah.
And when they bought it, I thought to myself, you know, that's just dirt on some paper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
like, for something a little cheaper, I'll teach you how to do it. and
Right?
and it hit me that the same reason when you look at something through your camera and you're just like, this is it. This composition is what I was after. It's singing, like, this is everything right now. Let's go home and paint this.
Hmm.
That's what they're seeing with our work, you
Yeah.
know?
No, and like I know, like obviously, like for someone to buy my work for like the amount they're paying for, they obviously like really see something in it. But I think it's kind of like, when you see your own handwriting and you're like, that looks really rough. But then you see your handwriting like upside down, or maybe you don't. I don't know. Like maybe you don't have really neat handwriting, but like sometimes I'll see my handwriting upside down and be like, wow, that's really nice handwriting. Oh, that's mine. Um, I feel like when you see something that you made through like the lens of being you and like knowing all the things that are wrong with you, um, you're like, why would someone want this? Like, I don't know. I just, knowing that I am very much not a perfect person, I'm like, you don't want to buy something from me. Like, I'm sure there are much better, like, more legit artists out there that you could spend that kind of money on, you know? Does that make sense? I mean, it's
It
imposter
does.
syndrome, I think.
That imposter syndrome, totally. And it quiets, but I
Yeah.
don't think it ever leaves, because I've been selling work, gosh, 15 years, and it's great. Every
Yeah.
sale, I'm floored. I'm so thrilled.
Yeah. I know, it's so exciting.
And then I definitely still oscillate between you just got one of the greatest drawings ever made to
Yeah.
it's dirt, right?
Yeah.
And,
Exactly. And like every
you
time an
know,
order comes through, it's like a combo of like, yes, like a sale, like I hope they love it. And I also am like, oh my God, like what if the photo is just like so, like what if it looks the same to me, but to them, like they get the painting, they're like, oh, this does not look like how it looked on my screen, on my device. I hate it, which has never happened. But like,
right.
I'm still waiting for the day. And I still am like convinced every time I don't hear from a customer about an original when they receive it, I'm like, oh, they hate it.
Well, that's such an amazing argument for great photography. Like,
Yeah.
if you haven't figured out how to get a great photographic translation, that is an absolute necessity for the artist toolkit if you're going to share work online, especially if it's for sale.
Yeah. And it can be really hard, like, especially when you've got a painting that has like a lot of like neutrals or grays, which I feel like are like disproportionately impacted by the lighting that you're in. Like,
Yeah,
time of day makes a huge difference in their look. And like, granted, it makes a huge difference in their look in person too. But I don't know. I think things with like really clear, like, that's red. Like, there's no question that is red. Like, it's gonna look to your brain more similar no matter what lighting it's in.
yeah. And then there's that problem of on my screen, it looks this way, but on
Mhm.
your differently calibrated screen,
Yeah, on your night mode, it does look pretty yellow.
yeah, like that might look pink or
Yeah.
warm orange. And you're just like, oh, that's not, please don't fall in love with one color note,
Yeah.
because it
I
might
yeah.
not be there.
That's definitely one of the scariest parts for me. It's just like hoping that the customer is not opening their painting and being like, this is a catfish painting.
Yeah, well, like I said, your photos are so good. I
Oh,
don't think you have to
thanks.
worry about that. But it is something like I've done that going to museums. I've looked at the art forever in art history classes or, on the internet. And then I get to the museum and I'm like, finally, then I look at it. I'm like, what? The
Yeah.
color's so different.
Yeah.
Everything's different. And so there's an interesting experience where it's like you get to meet a friend in a new way. So like
Mhm.
sometimes it can be like a really pleasurable thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like more vibrant and more like dynamic. But yeah, I've definitely noticed the same thing and be like, oh, this is like not what I was expecting. Not in a bad way, but like just not what
Totally.
I was expecting.
So, what are you working on right now? Because I've seen a lot of really cool paintings of book stacks. Are you like really into the book stacks right now?
I am like addicted to the book stacks. Like
I
I
love it.
literally I can't stop. And I feel bad because I'm like getting a little repetitive here. But they just I don't know. I think throughout a lot of the time that I've been doing still life work, I've kind of painted and composed scenes that I personally don't really feel like involved in. Like I always feel like almost like it's a very outsidery perspective. Like I used to paint like a lot of cards and like fresh cut flowers and wine and like actually I literally can't play games. Like I cannot remember the rules of a single card game. I don't play cards ever. Like I don't even touch cards except for to paint them. I barely ever drink wine and I definitely never have flowers around.
Yeah.
Um so it was all very much like an imaginary thing that like I can't relate to. I think the reason I'm just like really resonating with these books is because in reality, literally the only thing I do when I'm not painting is read books. So it feels just like I'm at a place where I can kind of like celebrate painting something that I actually do feel like I care about it. Like it does mean something to me. It just like gives me like a feeling, I guess, and not like a feeling of being an outsider. Um
I love that. So, I guess my next question then is my impulse, if I were in that position, would be to stack books in a way where they correlate with each other, where I'm like, yeah, this one definitely is friends with this one, like that kind of stuff. Do you ever think about that, or is this just like, this is my book stack?
I actually do put a lot of thought in how I stack them, but it's not really about like the books or their content. It's like how I think the best shadows will be cast,
Nice.
the best way to get some like visual variation. So it's not just like identical books stacked on top of each other. I like to squeeze in like a small one for like
Yeah.
the shadows over the top of it, or like a dark colored spine, or like a really old book that has like really browned pages. So yeah, I'm definitely like stacking them for the aesthetic, not for
So yeah, always going back to the formal composition.
yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've noticed on some of the books that you do edit how you paint their details.
Yeah.
Is that just like a save your sanity kind of
Yeah.
thing? Or yeah.
No, like 100%.
Yeah.
I I did a commission for one of my parents' friends, and she had me paint. So it was one of their couple friends, and the wife wanted me to paint all his favorite books. So basically, I just like stacked my own books, but I had to change all the covers and spines and write down the titles, and it ended up looking really cool. Like it was honestly worth it. But after that one, I was like, you know what? I think just little symbols will get the point across that it's a book. And actually, so okay, my mom is from France, and so she has like a ton of French books, and they're really cute. They just have like a totally different feeling to them than American books. They have very like clean, minimal spines, and like the covers are always like classic art. Granted, they are like French classics, so that's probably why. But I posted one and I like on Tumblr or something, and I had just painted like little tiny symbols that some of them had. Like I removed the titles, and someone commented, "What is your association with France?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you could literally tell that they were French books by like the little blue square. That's like a brand of books in France. It's like
Yeah,
on the
I
pocket."
actually know exactly what you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah, because I got a couple when I was in France.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone was able to tell, which I feel like mission accomplished because that was like kind of the point. Like they were just these cool French books, and I did want to get that across.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Well,
Anyway, sorry, that was
that's
like
great.
such a side tangent, but
No, no, it's perfect. So yeah, so right now you're working on book stacks and you're working in you said like slightly larger scale for you.
yeah.
That's really cool.
And like, I mean, I haven't done that many like significantly larger paintings, but just my average painting has gotten significantly larger. Like I feel like before my average size was like 6 by 6 inches, and now I feel like it's probably more like maybe like 10 by 10, 11 by 14 is like becoming a standard. So,
Yeah, that's such a great scale. Most of my studio drawings tend to be 9 by 12 or 12 by 16.
Yeah.
something like I said, I feel a kinship with your work because I feel like it has a lot to do with just visual composition and like the joy of making marks and building something.
Yeah, and I definitely see that in your work. I love like all like I feel like you're very good at like creating dimension that pops up off of the page and just like really satisfying like round shapes that have a lot of like I don't know, the form is just very like you could reach out and touch it.
Oh, thanks.
And I feel like to me when I look at your stuff, I'm like I bet that was really satisfying and fun. Like cuz you know when you just nail that perfect shape that just like pops. Like that's kind of the same way that I feel when I look at your work. Like you can tell it just kind of scratches that itch when you look at it.
Yeah, I love the idea of working with your perception and seeing what comes out. That's sort
Mhm.
of like authorial. This is my view, my take on the color, my take on the hatch mark, my all of that fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Let's see. I have two questions that I like to ask at the end of a conversation. I hope that's okay.
Yep.
So you had a different educational path than a lot of the folks I talked to, which is really exciting. But I'm still really interested in this. What was the hardest thing for you to unlearn?
So, do you mean like in terms of like skill set or just like a natural human tendency that I'm trying to not have?
I am good with any answer that comes to mind.
Okay, well, my top answer that comes to mind is, I guess, perfectionism. I'm not like a perfectionism in the sense that like everything has to be like perfect and clean or whatever. But I am in the sense that like I feel like I have a very hard time like trusting the process. And if I feel like something isn't fully fleshed out in my head, like then why even bother trying? I don't know, just kind of like a very like black and white mindset of like even attempting things. So I think I've gotten a lot better at just like diving into things without just like having to make them perfect to feel like it was worth my time. Because that like really, I mean, for me, it really held me back. And I think I do see that a lot, you know, when people are like, oh, I like want to start, but I don't know where to start. Like that to me, it's kind of just like perfectionism because it's like you're only going to start when you have that perfect feeling that like you found the thing that is going to be worth painting or drawing or whatever it is you do. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I feel like that like perfectionist all or nothing mindset is something that I've been unlearning and it's been very helpful.
That's a fantastic answer. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that on some level, right?
Yeah. It's
That's
like you
fantastic.
can't wait for inspiration to come every single time. Like sometimes it comes and it hits and it's like the best feeling, but like it's not always gonna come. You just have to like make a split second decision and not overthink it and just get to work.
Yes. Fantastic. The next question is, what are two wholehearted recommendations that you can share? So this could be like books, artists, films, tools, your stuff, anything that you really, really recommend that people check out.
So, okay, this for some people might be a no-brainer, but I did just find out that my best friend didn't know that libraries had free books. So, my recommendation, she was like, you don't have to like pay for them. And I was like, what do you think a library is? Like, um,
Well, I'm glad your friend had you.
yeah, I know. No, but so my recommendation is not just the library, but specifically Libby or like your local like e-library. I listen to audiobooks while I paint and I literally like couldn't paint without listening to an audiobook at this point. It's just what I do. So that's one of my big recommendations. I mean, they also have regular books, which I use, I use it for both things. So yeah, and then my current, so it's hard to narrow down. I have like three current art obsessions. Can I just say all
Yeah,
three of them?
please. Yeah,
So,
please.
okay. Zoe Frank is one of my favorite artists of all time. Yeah. And I did her like online workshop, which is like posted like after the fact. I guess it like wasn't in person and then she posts online. Fantastic. I did it last year. And that was like my first ever real like instruction, I guess you could say. That wasn't just like scrolling on wet canvas. And yeah, just like it's incredible. And then my other current artist obsession is Jeremy Miranda. His stuff is just like crazy.
He's amazing.
Like
Yeah.
it's literally like I literally like go on his page just stare at stuff. And then my third is Christina Weaver. I'm actually doing her workshop in person in like a week and a half, which I've
Uh,
never done before.
That's exciting.
I am so excited. I'm like actually really nervous too, because like I mentioned, I'm not very good at like being told what I have to pay, and like sitting through that, but I think I can handle it. I'm just her work is just nuts. So
Yeah, she's amazing.
it's yeah. I mean, I can't even describe it. I just think it's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have fantastic taste in artists. Yeah, that's really cool.
I just like want to be all of them all at once. So,
Yes. Yeah, I was talking about Jeremy's work last night on my virtual studio hangout.
really,
Yeah, because he had just made a post where he was talking about that he feels like he has so many different types of work.
yeah.
And I was like, really? Because like I didn't really get that vibe from it, but
Yeah, I don't either. It all just looks so recognizably his.
yeah, but when I was going through, I was like, okay, it's the subject matter.
Hmm.
And so like, okay, there's the trees, there's the decorations, there's the kitchen still lives and the
Yeah.
staging. I was like, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I guess if you
Um,
look at it like that, but it's all just like perfection.
yeah, and I feel like it's the kind of thing that we think about when we're so deep in it that the smallest change feels like a revelation. But to
Yeah.
anyone on the outside, we're like, it's all great, you know?
Yep,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
I know, and I feel like that sometimes about certain things. Like actually kind of same thing. Like when I do like a landscape, which is kind of rare instead of still life, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just feel like to me this looks like it's painted by a different person," which to anyone else probably not, but it does just feel totally different to me. So I get it.
Yeah. That's part of what makes it fun and lively, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Really
nice to be
cool.
able to talk to someone about art. I feel like we just like, well, I know you teach, but for me, I just like sit at home alone all day and, no one really gets it, I guess, like what the day-to-day looks like.
The day-to-day is, yeah, if you're not talking to someone who is a studio artist, the day in and day out real work that's involved, I think is lost on so many people.
Yeah. And like it is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and then on top of that there's the business,
Yes.
and on top of that there's being a person.
Yes,
You know, so
definitely.
it's a lot of stuff. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been phenomenal.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Leah, for your time and your generosity. If you want to see more of Leah's beautiful paintings, check out her website at leahgardner.art and follow her on Instagram also at leahgardner.art. She really has all that figured out. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a review, share it with your fellow artists and creative people in your life. All of that really helps bring these conversations to more people like us who really love this. If you want to keep the conversation going, watch exclusive podcast episodes, ask our guests questions, maybe attend our weekly Zoom hangouts, and a bunch more things, please join the virtual studio online community. The link will be in the show notes and the description. Thanks for being here. Talk soon.